this episode of Mr. Robot, Angela uses a rubber ducky to gain credentials to a computer system and steal sensitive documents.
Obviously, I would just bring them up myself, but security down here is insane. Can you please just come down?
Okay, I'll be right down.
Angela just used a social engineering attack to cause the receptionist to leave her computer unattended. That way Angela could use the rubber ducky to steal the credentials from her computer. Okay, she's pulled the credentials from the computer and they're stored on her rubber ducky now. So what she needs to do now is copy the dump file to her computer and then use memcats to extract the credentials. So that's what she's doing right now. She's copying the dump file to her computer, and in just a moment you'll see her open memcats. And there's memcats right there, and there's the credentials from the dump file. So now what she's going to do is use those credentials to log into the account of Joseph Green. Now she's accessing a network share, and she's found a trove of sensitive documents that she is now going to steal. There you have it, guys. She just used this attack to steal credentials and then very quickly steal sensitive documents. Let's get to it. What's up, guys? We're back with another Mr. Robot video, and in this episode we're going to expand on what we did in the last episode. If you recall, in the last episode, I explained how you could use a device called a teensy, just like a US Rubber Ducky. And we created a very basic script that would just open up Notepad and write some text in it. So what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to expand on that much further and actually create a real world scenario and use our teensy to pull credentials from a computer and then basically upload those. Well, here, let me kind of back up for a second. So here's one of the problems we face with using the teensy is, if you can see, it has no onboard memory. So the US Rubber Ducky does have an onboard memory. And actually there is a version of the teensy, a newer version, that includes the SD. So you can actually buy a version of the teensy, but it's more expensive, and I think it's almost the same price as the US Rubber Ducky. So we're kind of going the DIY route, so we're going to do it on the cheap. So since we don't have onboard memory on this chip, we need some sort of method to facilitate file transferring, because we need to get files onto the target computer, and we also need to get files off of that target computer. So what our goal is to basically create a teensy device that whenever we plug it into a computer, a Windows computer, it will basically do a process dump of the lsas.exe process. Once we have that dump file, we'll then need to upload that somewhere to where we can retrieve it, and then we can run memcats on that and basically pull out the plain text and any encrypted passwords. So that's our goal. But like I said, we face a few challenges because our teensy doesn't have onboard memory. Let's take a look at kind of like what we need to do to accomplish this. So basically our execution plan is we need to perform setup, and that's these steps right here. Next we'll execute our teensy attack, and that would be all these steps right here. And then lastly, once we have our dump, we can then run memcats to get our credentials. So first thing first is we need to download some necessary files. So we need to get procdump.exe, and I have a link right here. I'll also include that in the video description. And this is actually hosted by Microsoft. So this is the link right here. Just click that link, download it, and you'll get a zip file. You're going to need these exes depending on the version of Windows you're going to be attacking. I would just take both of them. Okay, so let's see what else we got. So we're also going to need memcats. Now, this is going to be run locally on your computer, but one thing to keep in mind is most virus software will detect this and block it. You have the source code, and I recommend just downloading the source code and compiling it yourself as opposed to downloading it from somewhere that may be untrusted. So you're going to need to download the source code, and you can just click the button, download the zip, and once you have the once you've downloaded the zip file, go ahead and extract that, and then you'll need Visual Studio, and then you can open up the source code in Visual Studio, just like I have here. So once your project's open, you're going to need to compile it so you can get your executable files. You can see here I've already done so previously, and you can see this is the location of the file. The one important thing you need to take notice to is when you're building your project. If you need basically a 64-bit version, you need to make sure you select that when you compile, because by default it's going to be set to 32. So make sure you come in here and compile a version for both. That way you have a 32-bit version and a 64-bit version. So you make your settings here, click OK, and then you can just build your solution. And you can see, since I've already compiled it, it's said, hey, nothing's changed, so yeah, you're good. So now I have all those files. So then what I need to do is just store those, keep those handy for later, because once we actually get the credentials off our victim's computer, we're then going to use this to dump the credentials. Alright, so let's see, what else do we need to do? Alright, so next, our issue is we need to get this procdump.exe file onto our victim computer, but we can't use the teensy to do that. Actually, that's not true. We could use the teensy to do that by basically converting this binary file into its hex equivalent, and then storing that as text, and then writing that to a file, and then using a Visual Basic script to convert that back to a binary. The problem is our teensy just doesn't have enough space on it even to do that. So that's just not an option. So the only option we really have is to download this file via the internet. In order for us to facilitate that process, we need to host this exe file somewhere on the internet so our victim's computer is able to download it. So you need a web server. So that's really easy if you have Kali Linux. You can see I have it loaded up right here. If you haven't Kali installed, all you need to do is type service apache 2 and start, and that'll start up the Apache server. And then browse to the var www.html folder, and you want to put your procdump, which you see right here, in this folder, because we're going to need to be able to access this file later on via our victims. So now I have this procdump.exe hosted on my Kali Linux server. I'll need to use my IP address. That way my victims are able to download this file from my web server at this IP address. Alright. Next, we need a, so once we've attacked our victim and we have created a dump file, we now need to upload this dump file so we can then access it and then run memcats on it locally. So how I did this was basically set up an FTP server on my Kali box that would facilitate the transfer of the dump file. And I have a video on my channel about setting up a FTP server in Kali Linux, so go check that out if you don't have an FTP server set up. But I've already got it set up here. And so this is the directory where files will be uploaded, and that's actually this folder right here. So whenever a dump gets uploaded, we should see it right here in this box. Okay, so now we're done with our setup. We've downloaded our proc dump, we've compiled memcats, we got that ready, we got our web server set up, and we got our FTP server set up ready to go. So now we are ready to actually get into the teensy part of things. So let's look at the code, because we need to do a lot of things here. So basically what our teensy script needs to do is it needs to open an administrator command prompt. Not just any command prompt, it's got to be an administrator command prompt. And then we need to write our various helper scripts to the victim's hard disk. That way we can execute them as administrator. And that's going to take 3 different scripts that we're going to need. This first one is called down.vbs, and this is a Visual Basic script that's going to download our procdump.exe file, or this could be any other payload that you want to use. But it's going to download this via HTTP via our web server. So basically any web server, it'll work with this. The next script is up.bat, and this is basically just our batch script that's going to upload our dump file to our FTP server. And then lastly we have go.bat, and this is just kind of like the main script that's going to basically facilitate the entire process. So we would then execute that. That would do everything we need to do, download the files, create the dump, upload it to our FTP server, do some house cleaning, and close out. And there we have it. So this takes us now to our new teensy script. So let's take a look at that. I got that loaded right here. This is our main script that our code is going to execute. So let's go through this. So the first thing we need to do is open an administrator command prompt. And I'm going to run through these real quick, and then we'll go look at the code for each one. Once we have that command prompt, if they have user access control, we need to handle that. So we have a routine that will, select a yes automatically without user input. Next, we have this line of code. It's a cleanup code, and it basically just deletes any of the files that we created. The reason we're calling this before we're doing anything is sometimes when you're using these teensy devices, and same thing with the Rubber Ducky, they're not perfect. So you might have to unplug and plug it back in to try to run the attack a second time, or maybe even a third time. And this will make sure that everything runs smoothly, that no existing files from previous attempts will interfere with your new attempt. Once that's done, we're then going to run the routine that's going to write all of our helper scripts to disk. Once that's complete, we'll then execute our main script that will facilitate the entire process. Once that's complete, we'll again run cleanup. So, once we're done with everything, we're going to delete everything, cover our tracks. And then lastly, we're going to close our command prompt, and we will be done, and we can then remove the teensy. Alright, so the first routine we have is the command admin. So let's find that. Let me explain what's happening. Okay, so these delays, so most of them can be modified. You want to do some testing though, because some of these are very particular, and if you change them, they will cause the script to break and your Teensy will not do what you want it to do. So sometimes these delays are very important. You may get away with making them shorter, so everything happens faster. In some older computers, you may need to add time to them because the computer is just slower. It's going to need more time to execute all these various commands. So you may want to add some more, a buffer to this, so that way in case you do happen to need to attack a slower computer, it'll already be ready to go for that. Okay, so to open up a Windows command prompt, what we're going to do is we're basically doing the Windows key, and we're then so once the Windows key opens up, you can start typing, and then Windows will start giving you options. Well, once you type CMD, it'll automatically go to the command option, as you can see here. Now here's the trick. Now if you just hit enter on this, it's going to open a regular command prompt. See, it doesn't say administrator right here. That means we do not have an administrator command prompt. But if you hit the Windows key, type CMD, but this time hold Control, Shift, and press enter, you can see now it's going to give us an administrator command prompt. So that's what we're going to simulate with our Teensy. Alright, so that's what we have right here. We're pressing the Windows key, then we're typing in the CMD command, then we're waiting a second, then we're pressing Control, adding Shift, and then pressing enter. We're sending that off, waiting 200 milliseconds, and clearing that out. Perfect. So now we have opened up our administrator command prompt. However, there's a problem. Now we have to deal with the user access control. So that is our next function here. So we pause for 1 second, and then we press the left arrow key. We send that off, and then we press enter twice. Now, I found it to be necessary to hit enter twice. There's a few lines of code in here that don't make sense to me, but it was what was necessary in order for things to work. So I'll point those out, but just understand that it's there for a reason. Alright, so now we completely have a administrator command prompt at this point. So now we're just sitting there with a open command prompt with administrator privileges. So the first thing we want to do is run our cleanup routine. That's right here. And so you can see the first thing it does is make sure we're working in our Windows temp directory, and then it deletes all the files that our process will create. Pretty easy. Once that's done, now we're going to write our scripts. Alright. Now this one's very important because you're going to need to make some modifications here. The main thing is you're going to need to modify in this first one, and this is our download script. I actually should have typed that. So this is our download script right here. The only thing you need to edit is right here. And this is the link or the URL to where you're hosting the procdump.exe file. So just edit that to your IP for your web server. And in my case, I have my IP right here, but you'll need to use your own because that's not going to work for you. Alright, so now we have that file written to disk, but now we need to actually save it and close it. So we have this save close routine. And basically all this does is send Control S to save the document and then Alt F4 to close the document. I was trying to do Alt F Alt S to save and Alt F, Alt X to close, but for whatever reason I could not get that to work, and this worked, so that's what I ended up with. Alright, next we're going to create our go.bat, and this will basically execute our download script, download proc dump. Once it's downloaded, it will then run the proc dump command on the lsas.exe process, and once we have that dump, it'll then execute the upload batch file to upload the dump file to our FTP server. So once that command has been written, it will then save and close it, just like the method previously. Next, we need to upload, or basically write to our victim's disk, our upload script. So this is what we have here, and basically this is just a batch script that is running command line FTP that's available on all Windows. So first thing first, this is one of those weird things. For whatever reason, I had to do this line twice. I don't know why, I don't know what was going on, but I had to do this line twice. And this line is your user login. So this, in my case, this is my user login. It's FTP. This could be anything, it's, you know, your name, whatever it is for your FTP. But in my case, my username is FTP. So that's why we have this twice, because it wasn't working unless I put it in there twice. And then next, this line is for your password. Again, I just have a dummy account set up, FTP. So that's my password. This would be your password. Next, the way my FTP is set up, I need to change to the upload folder in order to upload files. So that's what I'm executing here. Now I'm telling the FTP server, hey, I want to go in binary mode. Now I'm telling the FTP server I'm sending you a file, and once that's done, we're going to quit. And this is basically firing, this is the command that will fire up the FTP server, or rather the FTP client, and connect to the FTP server. And this is something else that you'll need to edit. You'll need to edit this with the IP of your FTP server. And then lastly, it'll just delete this file that it creates in order to execute the FTP commands. Alright, and once it's written all that, it will save and close. And let's go back up to the top. So we have now wrote all of our helper scripts to the victim's computer's disk. So now we need to execute our payload. So let's find that routine. Right here. And you see it's just simply typing into the command prompt go.bat. And that's going to execute our Go script, which will download our procdump.exe. Once it's downloaded, it'll run the command to dump the credentials, and then it'll upload those credentials to our FTP. And once it's done with that, it's going to clean up, which we've looked at, and then lastly it's going to close the command prompt, and that's just simply type in exit in the command prompt. So perfect. Now that we got the script, we can just copy it, open up Arduino, paste it in there, save that sucker. Now remember, you need to have everything configured. You'll need to have your Teensy board selected. I'm going to make sure you're in keyboard mode. Your CPU speed is not going to matter. And you'll need to select your keyboard layout. You know, I'm going to need US English, but hey, maybe you need French. Alright, once that's all done, just simply upload the script to your Teensy and you'll be good to go. Just remember, when it uploads, it also automatically runs it. So this is going to run on your computer, so be prepared. One thing you can do to deal with that is to increase this delay. You know, maybe make it 5 seconds. But you just need to remember, every time you go to use this, you have to wait 5 seconds. So if you're in a scenario where you have to be quick, that might not be acceptable. But if you're in a scenario where there's no one around, there's not going to be anybody around, well, you got a little bit more time. So just take that into consideration. Alright, so once you have your Teensy loaded, you're ready to go. As long as your web server's up and your FTP server's up, you got your Teensy, your victim computer has internet access, you're ready to go. So I think we're ready to actually try this out. Let's see. So we need to necessary setup, got that. Yep, we're ready to go. Okay. I'm going to minimize everything. I'm going to leave. I'm going to move this over here. Alright, just minimize everything. Alright, so now I'm about to plug in my Teensy device that has been programmed with our script. And if all goes well, when everything is done, we should be able to load my Kali back up and we should see a dump file. And that's going to be a dump file of my personal computer right here on Windows 10. So here we go. So far so good. Now it's doing the cleanup. Now it's creating our download script. Now it's creating our go script. Now it's creating our upload script. Now it's going to execute this. Alright, we just did our dump. We just uploaded, cleaned up, and we closed out. So our Teensy is done, everything executed properly, and we should have our dump file. And sure enough, there's our dump file right there. Alright, so now let's go back to our list here. Okay, so now we're on the last part of the execution process. So these are actually commands right here. So we're going to run memcats. We're going to run this command, and it'll dump our credentials. So I already have the dump file. And you can see it's about 47 meg, so just take that in consideration. That's about the size you could be looking at. So I have a computer over here, Windows 7 loaded up. I thought it was clear. Whatever. Alright, so now what we need to do is execute our commands. Let me just show you real quick. So we're working out of this directory here on a Windows computer. I have already uploaded the dump file right here, and you can see I have memcats. So now I have a command prompt open inside this directory. We're going to run memcats. So we get it running. Our first command, mini dump, and then we're going to tell it the dump file name. Alright, perfect. And now we're going to execute. And boom, there's the credentials. Now I got these blurred out because these are my real credentials. And not only do you get the encrypted hashes, but you can also get plain text passwords. And I'm looking at a lot of my plain text passwords. Yeah, it's kind of crazy how easy this is. So there you have it, guys. That's how you can use this Teensy device to be a very effective tool in gaining further credentials to a system. So thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to give me a thumbs up. I greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe so you get updates to my new videos. And stay tuned, I got some more Mr. Robot videos in the works, and I will see you guys on the other side.